Thank you.
Moving now to the item 14, and that's the
Excuse me.
City Centre to Māngere Light Rail update. And we have Robert Simpson, Principal Transport Advisor, Amanda Harland. Well, we've got David Hawkey instead. No, Amanda's here.
You've got the Holly
And David.
Can I just add one thing to start this?
Yes, and we'll just have a brief introduction by Jim Quinn.
I just wanted to say earlier today when we were talking about something else I can't remember which, with the city centre master plan, there was talk about this beginning in Māngere. There's no decision being made at all. The only thing we know for sure is that we won't be doing anything around Queen Street before the America's Cup is complete. So there's assumptions based off that, but nothing is, no calls have been made at all.
Thank you. Robert, are you going to lead, or is it Amanda? I'm not.
No, I'll lead off. Thank you, Chair. So we don't have a great deal to add other than what's in the paper, so this will be a very brief introduction. The business case, as you know, has been led by NZTA, involving a number of agencies, including ourselves. It's very near completion. Once finalised, the NZTA board will then decide whether to proceed to the next phase of the project, part of which will involve public engagement. Several council staff members, along with staff members from AT and Panuku, have been involved in various parts of the work to date, including various aspects of the business case, Amanda and myself amongst them. And our involvement has been primarily around the land use side of things, as well as, in my case, the strategic case, which is one of the elements of the business case. And as you know, the land use work is particularly important to this project, given that it's fairly broad objectives that stretch beyond improved transport outcomes, also include facilitating growth and improved urban amenity along the corridor. And related to this is a parallel piece of work that we in the council, or rather the Plans and Places Department in the council, is leading, which is the corridor study, which this committee gave the go-ahead to last year. That's pretty much it by way of an introduction. Our recommendations, as you see them up there, reflect the fact that this is largely an update report, and we would like to come back to you at various regular points along the way. And what we're really asking for you today is just your ongoing support for our continued involvement in the work.
Thank you, Robert. And Robert, there's just some minor changes there, just emphasising that we'd like to be in supporting the NZTA in streetscape design and also in community engagement. I'm just wanting your feedback on that, and also further reporting, because in some ways we've been waiting for this report. This report's been put off because nothing substantial's arrived on our desks, that is the council desk. And in some ways this report doesn't say a lot more than what is possibly commonly known, but we needed to get something on the agenda. My concern going forward is I think we're going to have a situation where probably some things can be communicated by way of workshops and memos, and when it's substantial, by report. So just quick feedback on the B and C in red, please.
Yes, so I think new recommendation C covers that, and the fact that we'll have to report back to you via a variety of mechanisms, and likewise recommendation B, that there's nothing in there that we would have any problems or object to.
Okay, questions please, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you confirm that there's no ratepayer funding in this project?
The funding arrangements are yet to be determined. So earlier this year, the Minister of Transport assigned primary responsibility for delivering the project, including funding to NZTA.
1.8 billion.
1.8 billion was set aside in ATAP as seed funding. So there is an assumption yet to be confirmed that there'll be third-party funding coming from an as yet unidentified third party, I can't really say much more than that because A, I'm not privy to those discussions, and B, it's yet to be determined.
Okay, my second question is in the resolution, Mr. Chair, around support Auckland Council's ongoing involvement in delivering the project. I didn't think we were delivering the project. I thought NZTA were delivering the project. but we were involved in the project.
Yeah, I think that's what that means. So we're part of the group, and it's important that ourselves, Auckland Transport, NZTA, are all in the room, making sure that we bring our perspectives to this, and recommendation B probably highlights best where our roles are, but it's at a staff level, not as a funder or any of those things. The business case and the debates that government and you will have in future years will dictate that.
So that resolution doesn't quite read like that. It actually reads, support Auckland Council's ongoing involvement in delivering the project. Maybe we should be saying support Auckland Council's ongoing involvement, comma,
In the project.
Yep. Including blah, 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 blah. But we do not deliver this project, the government do.
Yeah, so we just take out the word delivering.
Okay, we can take out delivering, and I think we know what we mean then. Thank you.
That's good.
Councillor Filipino?
Chair, it's just really around the involvement of the local board and ongoing as well. I had a look at the risks and even the next steps, but there was no mention. As long as that continues, happy with it and happy to move the recommendation as well, and I'm sure Councillor Collins will end up seconding it. But look, it just doesn't mention it here. I just wanted to ensure that happens because, Chair, as you know, there was an issue that was raised around lack of community in this particular case. Not in the case I'm going to mention, there was no consultation around the closing of Mangere Bridge, the old Mangere Bridge. So the community was up in arms. So my point here is that, look, yes, I know we're involved in the project and not delivering, but it's so important to keep the local board advised because they were blindsided, as well as myself and Councillor Collins in regards to the closure. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note then, Councillor Filipino, and thanks for pointing that out, would you be agreeable to and supporting local board and community engagement?
Yeah, is that okay? If it's, yeah.
And I think it's assumed elsewhere, but it's good to pick up on that and
you,
supporting local board. It's probably local boards, plural actually, local boards and community engagement. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Relevant local boards.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier today, when I was frustrated over the loss of jurisdiction that this council has on other matters, tried to point out that this is a project that Auckland Council must have visibility on. In terms of, I have a question, in terms of reputational damage and so forth, and I pose these comments as somebody who has supported light rail on this route for a very long time. But I'm very unhappy that at this point, as we learned earlier today, we don't know whether the route's going to start in Mangere or whether it's going to start in downtown, the level of disruption. Having travelled the world looking at the implementation of light rail now for 25 years, how we as a council perform will be measured on our ability to see implementation, and frankly, the Auckland public will be disinterested in whether it's NZTA or whether it's Auckland Transport. We will take the flak if it goes wrong. So I'd like to say, how are you going to see the involvement of ward councillors as well as local boards? I think that's an issue. Have you made the recommendation, and I'd like to see a D up there, that the government cabinet be invited to meet with the Auckland councillors and the members of the IMSB? This is just one of a few issues that there needs to be a face-to-face meeting. So what advice have you received as officers on the willingness of the government to entertain that? Because at the moment it's really just officers to officers, and as elected members I think we're out of the loop, and I want to be able to support vigorously this project, but I'm feeling most unhappy at the moment. I feel that it could, we've got a business case to go, we've got all manner of other things to be agreed, but the principles and the values and the base, the context that we start on this is fundamentally flawed. So what have you done to convey that to the frustrations of elected members, and have you asked that the government ministers are willing to come and meet with the Auckland councillors?
Perhaps I should
Yeah,
handle
Jim?
that as I'm a member of the steering committee of this. So we've been very clear on what we will require, however, the NZTA team, as Robert said, have the lead on this. They're still working to their board to get a business case together for them, and that is not at that point yet. So I think I think there's a opportunity ahead once they are at a place where they're ready to talk to open up. But at the moment, we are simply just working through detail, as the team have talked about, in terms of route options and those sorts of things. I think there's a whole lot more, well before the procurement starts or money's even approved, where those engagements could come.
Well, Mr. Chairman, supplementary to that, I mean, we've just had a discussion about how strong a negotiator we can be with the government with regards to the port. I think this looks entirely passive. From a negotiation point of view, if this is the best that we can offer up from the elected members of the Planning Committee, it all looks a bit bland. This is our opportunity to actually give some grunt to the officers in terms of ongoing discussions with officials. And this is in no way any disrespect to Mr. Quinn, who I'm sure is very able in terms of negotiation. But we have to actually support our officers if we feel I might be isolated in terms of my frustration on this, but we have to be able to, if it is the collective view of this committee, give some guiding instructions to Mr. Quinn that may assist.
Well, look, we could have not had this report, and it would have been a lot blander on the agenda not having the report. The truth is, we actually are still waiting for information to come through from the New Zealand Transport Agency, and that is the bare bone fact of it at the moment. At the moment, we just don't have those indications. They are still working up their business case here.
But Mr. Chairman, you've given
David,
us...
do you want to add anything further to that? You're at the coalface along with Jim.
Nothing more to add to that, Chair. I mean, obviously the business case is yet to be completed and addressed by the board, so we're working with what we have, I suppose. So, in effect, what we have in the report is what we have at the moment.
And then when we do have that come in, then we'll be in a position to examine that and respond accordingly. And we'll put the proper structures in place then to deal with it. Member Namani?
This is a question, and I'm not sure if it's directed at council or if it's an NZTA issue, but just in the Māori impact statement it talks about there's a need for an engagement strategy with Māori mana whenua. Are they being engaged in the development of it, or is it being developed for them?
My understanding is they've been they're involved in the development of it. There was a hui earlier this month involving multiple iwi representatives with NZTA, including a bus trip along the corridor. I can't elaborate on any details because I simply don't know, but our understanding is that certainly iwi are being engaged in the development of that strategy.
I just wonder, in respect to B, given that we've identified the other components of the community, that we ought not take some, have some involvement as it relates to mana whenua, mā tāwaka in the area also, just to ensure, because it, just on reading the update at face value, it looks very operational, not necessarily strategic or not necessarily a treaty-based relationship, which perhaps might be an aspiration. But I wondered if you would entertain adding mana whenua, mā tāwaka to be.
Okay, can we just take out the and make that comma, local boards, or maybe it's local boards and community engagement, and
As well as.
I mean, I don't want to bundle this as one because I understand the importance
No,
of the
it could be
statute.
a comma between local boards
comma, after local boards and mana whenua and mata waka and community engagement.
Yeah, or it could just be a dash between mana whenua and mātawa.
Backslash.
Oh dear.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher again.
Well, Mr Chairman, at my earlier suggestion that you might consider including the ward councillors, you neglected to include them. I do think that, speaking as a ward councillor, and I'm sure Councillor Casey will agree with me, this is one that there does need to be some...
Would you like to have the ward councillors included there? Because you haven't proposed
Well,
that. So
I did
just
propose that when I spoke before, that ward councillors will have more than a passing interest in this. So I do, and I know that Councillor Casey has expressed this on other occasions, but it's not just...
relevant local boards
Albany
and relevant
Moscow,
and ward councillors. Relevant local boards and
Yeah,
ward
no,
councillors.
I'm sure that both of us are cool with that.
I'm happy.
And it's I guess it's, and that doesn't exclude other councillors because this is a project that affects the whole region as well. But look, we'll put that there. That's good. Include that. Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Just very quickly, it's not mentioned directly, but maybe it's inferred indirectly, and that is the value uplift. So council-owned strategic property at Mount Eden, that will be where the interface of light rail, potentially and heavy is. I mean, then the government, through Housing New Zealand, has a massive land holding in both Mount Roskill and Mangere. Will that inform part of the business case, or is it a separate issue?
There is work going on that very question, and it will inform the business case.
So it will be part of the ranking of the business case?
I believe so, yes.
To some extent.
Thank you. Now it's moved by Councillor Filipino, I think. Councillor Collins, second?
Happy to second.
One
Councillor Close.
question. In the development, is there any consideration of a spur line, so to speak, that would go to Kingsland in case, going forward, Eden Park does survive?
I'm not aware of any work on that.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in... okay. Councillor Walker.
I don't know why I dropped off, Mr Chair.
I couldn't see your name here, but it's here now.
Okay,
Councillor
I was
Walker.
quite punctilious about that. Anyway, just want to completely endorse the comments that Councillor Fletcher made. I mean, this is a hugely important project for Auckland, and we should have a maximum of transparency. It's really disappointing the way that the council's being treated, frankly. There are a number of things that aren't up there, and I don't know whether you'd consider adding them. Obviously, there are significant issues around heritage. That's a little bit more than streetscape design. There's the issue of accessibility. We still don't know how many stops there are going to be, whether they're going to be 200 metres, for example, which has been the case along this road. The issue around the increasing number of people in the population that are disabled, particularly in this catchment. And there's no mention all about retail. Quite obviously, it's going to have a huge impact on retail. So I just put those things up and reflect on the fact that this is arguably the most iconic street in Auckland. There's even a song written about it by Don McGlashan. Maybe we should play that.
Please don't sing it, though.
We'll let the mayor sing it. He's got a fine voice.
This really goes to the heart of Auckland,
You wouldn't know,
Mr
you've
Chair.
never heard it.
And the government's planning it, not us, in part. So I reflect.
We're letting them.
I reflect Councillor Fletcher's concerns, and I think that we need to be strong from the start.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Sorry, Jacques, did you?
No, too late.
Got to get your
A
hand
bit
up
too
early
late
around
for
here,
you,
Jacques. Okay, nothing important there, Jacques?
Say it.
I was going to suggest possibly a new D,
So was I.
but it's too late
ran
for
out of
that.
time.
It's never too late, Joe.
Okay,
What was
I've
that?
still got the item up here,
Sure.
and we've voted on that. Look, Jacques' the lead, one of the lead officers on this, so I think I need to go back to you, Jacques.
An idea just occurred to me when Councillor Fletcher was speaking. I think it would be fair to say that as councillors, or us as local government staff, we do have a certain understanding of what is important to communities and how they might react to certain things and what they would like to see and not see. And that same understanding may not necessarily be amongst all of the other partners, because that's not the level they work at. And so the thought that I had, and so one can run into problems down the line if you don't appreciate those things. And so the thought I had was that maybe they, just like the council is going to communicate to the logistics study work group chair, maybe the council can also communicate to the minister its desire to engage directly on this project, because it is a massive project. It is going to have major impacts along the whole route on many communities, and you want to support it and you want to get it as right as possible. And it certainly would help, I think, if you just indicate that to the minister, that you would really like to have that discussion with politician to politician.
Okay, so we haven't left the item, even though we've voted on it, so...
Just get it
I'll have to remember this
we've
for the future.
voted on clauses
Dangerous precedent.
A, B and C. We haven't left the item, so the standing orders allow us to consider a D. And but do you have, I need to do this reasonably quickly, Jacques, do you have the words there?
No.
Okay. Can we keep this item open, and we're going to come back to it, okay, for the D?
Mr Chairman, if you could just note that whilst I spoke in terms of questions, I didn't speak to the item, and I did have my hand up because I was going to propose a D. Now, my words may not have been as diplomatic as has been proposed, possibly, and so I'm happy to confer during the continuation of the agenda and come back to it. But I do want to see some formal expression of disappointment that there hasn't been elected member to elected member. And so if I can find some words that perhaps are more moderate than the ones that I have written here.
Can we make it constructive rather than a complaint?
Well, I would like to feel it will be constructive. It's just how it's expressed. So I'm happy to go and work with Jacques on that.
Okay, and look, I'll ask them, Mayor Goff, would you mind, these probably involve you as our key representative. Jacques, would you mind engaging with the Mayor on these words too? Because I think if they involve you as our key conduit to the Minister, I think the Mayor needs to be over the top of those words as well.
I'm certainly taking on board the message that a number of councillors have raised, that they would really like to have direct access to the Minister in a forum, and I'm certainly in favour of doing that, not in a format that hasn't been as successful in the past, because we have too many ministers, many of whom we don't want to question, but getting the key people here whose portfolios overlap with the focus of our work, and I'm happy to try and arrange that in the new year. So Councillor Casey and Fletcher, I think, have both raised that point, and please keep in touch with me and we'll do our best to make that happen.
Yep. So Jacques, we're just going to go to another item. We're going to come back to this D. If you can work with the Mayor and Council.
The Mayor is about to
the Mayor's about
because he's
Mr Chairman, to that effect, if the Mayor is leaving at this point, I would make the point to him that this is about the Minister of Finance. This is about ministers that are involved with placemaking. This is about the Ministers of Transport. This is not just about the Minister of Transport. So I would hope that the words we can find will be representative of the wider group of ministers that will have collective responsibility on this for the delivery, and their understanding of what Auckland can contribute and what Auckland expects.
Yeah, I think, at the top of my list would be Ministers of Transport and Housing, of the Environment, of Local Government, and if we can get him, the Minister of Finance, and maybe on a separate occasion, even the Prime Minister, if we can work our way into her diary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to come back to that item, and thank you. We'll come back and deal with the D. Right now,